wanted to point out that the box art for Deathgate is taken from the cover of the third book in the series, which is called Firesea. And that is, of course, the book that is set in Abarak. And the first 4 books of the Deathgate novel series by Weiss and Hickman follow the hapless path through the game. So, of course, that's a similarity. All right. I have tea, which was nearing 100 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure offhand how much that is in Fahrenheit. But I don't know. Americans might know offhand. Maybe not. Anyway, I did manage to play back to the point at which we stopped. I still don't know what to do. And I think I want a sip of tea before I jump back in. Make sure everyone else has a chance to settle as well. Okay, let's head back in. So, we still don't know how to convince Balthazar to use Unravel Illusion here. He seems to have privileged knowledge of this spell.
Yes, what is it now?
What is it now? Look at the size of that dragon and the length of that neck. Exactly.
What are you reading?
This is just one of my own books on magic.
We know that, sir. So, we need to get him to use the spell. I kind of wanted to try saying create illusion. Saying that we could create illusion since we were a kid, just to see if that stokes him, but I don't think it will. Oh, by the way, quick factoid. During the break, I also was trying to click through the dialogue, and I did tell him that we're from the labyrinth and that his ancestors imprisoned us, and that actually tipped him off, and he knew that we were a patron, and he immediately kills us. So, see, there is some value into carefully choosing your dialogue choices, and also apparently shows that he doesn't notice that we're a patron. He just thinks that we're a person. Yep. But so far, I don't think we've made a mistake like that. We have died once so far this playthrough, haven't we? Okay, let's try this one.
You might want to get some exercise. Sitting there reading won't put meat on those bones.
I have just enough meat on my bones, thank you. Reading is what I enjoy, and in doing so, I have outlived all of my contemporaries. I wouldn't be surprised if I outlive you.
Oh god, maybe we should do some more reading. We are reading all of your dialogue, sir. As are you.
What was this breakthrough?
I've been trying to construct the spell by taking a back route. I reasoned that if I discovered how to break...
Yes. Okay, so let's try this dialogue choice here.
Create an illusion. That's easy. I've been able to do that since I was a kid.
Well then, I might as well put a halt to my research right now. I'll leave the teaching of my apprentices to you, and I'll resurrect myself since my life's purpose is over. Thank you for the insight.
Excellent tone of voice there, sir. You can hear his scathing, and he kind of lowers his eyes back to his book. Wow, that halts the conversation. That's great. All right, pupper. Go on, dog. You know you want to. So I still really do not know what to do. We know that Possession and Ward, weren't those two similar spells? But that's really it. We can't convince the dog to do anything. The dog isn't yours to give. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we can. I mean, I think Possession and Ward might have been useful as an example of one spell being augmented to form another spell. And that's also where we learned that similar looking spells can have wildly different effects, which is why I thought that Create Illusion and Unravel Illusion might not need to be so closely related visually. But it could be that they are. Balthazar seems to think they are. Let's talk to the gamblers again. We can't get the gamblers' attention. They're too engrossed in their game. Yeah. And once the dog is barking, he just doesn't stop. He says they're related. Let's play with magic. Oh, we can drop the rune bone. You shake the rune bones in your hand and drop them. They form a pattern, but since you don't know the rules, you have no idea if you won or lost. Some of the gamblers look over at you and chuckle. A little embarrassed, you pick them back up again. Can we give the rune bones to Balthazar?
That's nice.
Can we cast spell on Balthazar? Maybe he doesn't know that we're a magician. You know? He seems to demean us when he's talking about magic. We can't go into the tunnels, can we? The tunnels only get more crowded as you get further in. Yeah, so we return. There's still no idea what this vice could be for. We could cast heat on the lamp. Just to cause some chaos. Why not? None of the spells we know have any significant effect on the lamp. Are these runes in our rune inventory now? Let's have a look at them. Scan them visually, will you? A circle, 2 crisscrosses, something that looks like a, I don't know, spring of water hitting a platform from underneath, and that twisty thing. Doesn't look like we have them. That might have been an interesting approach, though. We do have rune transfer, but these runes here aren't really material. They're just in our mind. Let's cast Cold. The cave wall cools a bit, but quickly warms back up to room temperature. The dog wags his tail. He seems to like you. But he doesn't continue barking this time. Okay, what if we wait? Now we wait. Nothing else new is happening there. I'm gonna need some more ideas, folks. Well, we can talk to him again, but...
Yes, what is it now?
What are you reading?
This is just one of my own...
What was this breakthrough?
I've been trying to construct the spell by taking a back route. I reasoned that if I discovered how to break an illusion...
This is getting too technical for me. Let's talk about something else.
Certainly.
Thank you for your help. Perhaps we'll speak later.
As you wish.
Okay. I think my only other recourse is to go back to the book again, read through it very carefully, see if we have any way to create this Unravel Illusion spell ourselves. Because it doesn't look like we're going to get it from him. Or we could give his journal back to him.
That's nice.
He doesn't want it? He doesn't even acknowledge it? Okay, so if we open the book, we have to be careful not to go back a page, because we don't want that to happen again. What spells do you have? Well, we know what spells we have, right? The last ones are Ward and Possession. We have Hunger. I mean, we could use Hunger on the dog again, but I doubt that would work. We could possess the dog, couldn't we? Maybe that's it. Because then we can see through his eyes, right? Of course. That's got to be it, Lexi. Thank you. And the dog's been there once, so, you know. All right, let's try it. He is our canine companion. You trace the runes in the air and place your hand on the dog's scruffy fur. The magic swiftly takes hold. You stiffen as you feel your soul passing away. Everything goes dark. The darkness doesn't last long. We've read this before. A bitter, sharp odor draws your attention to the east. Through the dog's eyes, you see a small tunnel that you missed before running into the cave wall. Dry, stale air from the opening carries a disturbing smell, an evil smell. Woof. Isn't it so satisfying? That answer was right there in front of us. Everything slowly guided us toward it until it was all that was left, and we just needed to see it. And in this case, you saw it, Lexi. So, yes. 10 points. 5 points. All right, well, we can go in there. An evil smell. The dog knows what evil smells like. All right. I have no memory of this. Let's brace ourselves. The game was like the dog man, the dog. Yep. Okay, here we go. You feel something very wrong about the tunnel to the east. You cannot force the dog's body into it. Perhaps it has more sense than you. And we're not doing much else. We can use our dog actions. We can bark the secret cave. Aw. Can we read the book? Looks like we can't select the book. Nope. We can go back to the ship, but I think we will haplo. You nuzzle your motionless body. Yep. Okay, well, maybe we can tell Balthazar what we found now.
Yes, what is it now?
There we go. We just needed a little dog-spiration.
Have you noticed anything unusual about that cave wall to the east?
Unusual? No, it's just a cave wall, one of many, actually. Why?
What would you say if I told you that it was an illusion?
I'd say, how can you possibly know that? Your brain can't distinguish reality from illusion. You are a higher life form, aren't you? That's just an assumption, mind you.
He still doesn't recognize us as a patron.
I've looked at it through the dog's eyes, and it's not there. What do you think that means?
You mean you possessed the dog and he didn't see it? Yes, that would follow. The spell does not communicate with the lower life forms, and by possessing the body of such a form, you would bypass the magic of the illusion. You say it was the east wall. It's an illusion. Imagine. I've been sitting this close to an illusion every day, eager for a chance to test my unravel illusion spell. I'll try it now.
That'll cost you 4 rune bones, bucko. Balthazar wanders over to the cave wall. He touches it, even pushes it with all his might. With a questioning look in your direction, he He waves his hands about, tracing blue, glowing lines in the air. When he has finished the final rune, the spell floats into the wall. The rock flickers, then dissolves like so much mist. Beyond, you see a small crawlway stretching into darkness. Also so beautifully concordant that the dog couldn't go in there, but perhaps we can. Maybe if you just tested your spell now and then, you might find not only an illusion, but that your spell works. Exactly. And this is the first time he's even confirmed that the spell does work. Looks like he had it. Don't know how he knew he had it. Or was even as confident as he was. Right, you wouldn't need to know an illusion was there. He really seemed to wait for some provocation, though. That principle of not wasting resources or whatever. I mean, would it have wasted resources? What would it have hurt just to try it?
It worked! It worked! This is exactly what my research needed. Now that I know the Unravel Illusion spell is correct, it won't take long to finish the Create Illusion spell.
Balthazar dives back into his book, Mary Poppins style, and resumes reading with rekindled enthusiasm. So I wonder if the key to the Create Illusion spell is to augment the Unravel Illusion spell in exactly the same way that the Ward and Possession spells were related. Maybe. Balthazar studies one spell for years and years. Aplo, pet's dog fixes magic. Yes. Okay. I think I'll do the honors. Let's head in, shall we? Okay, it's evil time. The dog stays behind, bristling and growling at the tunnel. The air in this small hidden cavern is heavy and thick. Something happened here, something very evil. But we do have an identify magic spell. There's a wall back here too. Doesn't look like an illusion. And a spell book. The first actual authority on spells we found. I guess Balthazar's journal did count, but I don't know. Do we want to take this thing, or do we want to identify it first? There is some lingering magic of Kleitus' dark spirit remaining in the black robe, but it's harmless. That's good. We sure could have used that robe for the dwarven gods situation, couldn't we? But there's some magic from Kleitus' spirit in this robe? Oh. Oh. We do have a rotting dwarf that it might help if we could convince we were the lord of. Your fingers touch the black material of the robe. It feels inexplicably cold. The frost runs up your arm and soon your whole body begins to shiver. The rocks of the cave seem to take on a life all their own. They whirl and twist and become something totally new. You realize that you are seeing a vision of an entirely different place. You see a man dressed in the robe you touched. Although the room is dark, he is unmistakably silent. He stands in front of a gigantic stone spire covered with magic runes. His attention is focused on a large rune in the center of the spire. A nervous dwarf stands nearby, watching this man cast spell after spell at the rune. The wizard curses and yells as the blue fire strikes the stone, but without effect. I assume this is Kleitus I. Finally, a particularly fierce spell actually affects the column. Its usually constant blue grows faint. With a triumphant shriek, the wizard commands the dwarf to approach the spire and break the rune. We're seeing this from the dwarf's perspective, it looks like. The dwarf quakes with fear but remains steadfast. He approaches the room with a hammer and wedge held out in front of him. When he cautiously touches them to the rune, a massive explosion throws his body back like a rag doll. The man shrieks again, but in frustration. He curses the dwarf's limp body for its weakness. The strength of madness enters the wizard, and even while maintaining the spells that hold the spire's rune at bay, he simultaneously casts a mighty spell, too quick to memorize, upon the dwarf's corpse. Is that the resurrection spell? We're not going to learn it? He cast it too quickly, huh? A misty image of the dwarf appears, floating over the body. Its expression is one of pain and terror. It's as if something has taken hold of it, in the manner of a rope wrapped around its foot, and is dragging it back into the corpse. When the spirit image has been totally subsumed by the body, the dwarf's eyes jerk open. The man in black screams at the dwarf to finish his task. Slowly, the dwarf drags himself to his feet, gathers up a hammer and wedge, and approaches the spire. He touches the tools to the rune again. Again, the magic reacts, but now the explosion only rips flesh from his bones, and somehow the dwarf manages to stay his ground. 5 blows of his hammer force a chunk from the center of the rune to fall away. Immediately, the rune's glow vanishes, and all of the other runes on the spire grow a bit darker. The man in black laughs as he picks up the piece of stone. Yeah, this game's loudest sounds are loud, I know that, and I'm sure they competed with my voice, so I apologize for that. Those are exceptional moments in this game. He admires the rock in his hand as if it were some kind of relic. Then he turns his attention to the obvious hole in the spire's rune. With his free hand, he weaves an intricate spell that is too complicated to follow, and suddenly the rune appears to be whole again. The strange pair exit the chamber, leaving the spire seemingly whole, but much darker than it started. What is this place? Could this be the Colossus? Is that why it's broken? Because he broke it for some reason? Why would he want to do that? It certainly shows us how that dwarf got resurrected, it would seem. And there's also a throne or something in the background with a rune of its own on it? And what's this rune on the Colossus? Why would breaking it and then repairing it not repair the Colossus? Do we need to get the stone and put it back? The scene shifts. Now you see the same man seated on a throne. He holds a scepter which has, as its headpiece, the same chunk of stone from the spire. We've seen it. Or we've at least seen a replica, but it might be the real thing. We tried to get it before, but couldn't. Others in his court display obvious fear of their ruler and keep quite a distance from him. This man seems to prefer it. You see no sign of the dwarf. That dwarf might be living his afterlife in that cave at this point. Another scene. The wizard is much older. He is handing the scepter to another younger man whose face bears a close resemblance to that of the wizard. That's got to be Kleitus II, the second. You can see the avarice and longing in his eyes, and the reluctance in the eyes of the wizard in black. After the younger man has snatched the scepter away, he takes no further notice of the older wizard, who walks slowly off. Now you see the old wizard in this very cave. He stands on the rock floor alone. The madness in his eyes is overwhelming. He murmurs to himself for a while. You catch only the mouthings of a few words. They'll never find me, and must never bring me back. Never. He doesn't want to be resurrected, it seems. His hands wave aimlessly in the air. But then you begin to see the blue traces of a spell. Soon the rune construct is completed. It flies into his body and explodes in flames. The wizard thrashes a bit, but in short order is no more than a pile of ash. Surprisingly, the robe he wore has been left untouched by the flame. Does that mean we get to learn that spell? That spell is just a touch more serious than many of the spells that we have learned so far. Nothing happens for a while. Then you realize that the visions have ended and that you are looking at the same scene only thousands of years later. The robe lies in the same place, covering the ashy remains of the old wizard. Tentatively, you pick up the robe, but no further images haunt you. Why did we have that vision? His spirit was somehow lingering there until we touched it? What is the name of the spell that we learned? We'll find out soon enough. Remains. Only a vaguely human outline of ash remains on the floor. There's our book. That looks like a bit more ominous, a book. And we can wear the robe and take it off. Given its age, the flowing black robe is in surprisingly good condition. The hood and sleeves are a bit frayed, but the back is badly torn. Well, shall we read the new book? Let's do it. A Study of Necromancy. Time to get to the heart of this realm, my friends. A Study of Necromancy. Let it be known by any who would read this book, who would learn of the dark practice of necromancy, that it is forbidden. Let the reader do so at the peril to his soul and to those of his brethren. Now, necromancy as we know it is not forbidden, it's widely used. Presumably this book was either at odds or it came from an earlier time. Let's see. This is just bed knobs and broomsticks. What is necromancy other than substitutionary locomotion? That is certainly a fine stub of an argument. This tome is intended for information's sake only. He who disregards this warning and undertakes to practice this discipline has committed a crime against his race, and at this time, a crime punishable by death by order of the Sartan High Council. The Sartan High Council? This is from an earlier time. Apparently they just didn't want this spell to be used. Maybe because they understood that it wasn't a good idea. Maybe Kleitus the first necromancer was onto something? I guess we just saw Kleitus himself resurrect the dwarf. Apparently he had a necromancer that could do it for him, but I don't think that necromancer was in our vision. Also, that's the Star of Astaroth. Yeah, that's a good point too. That fits well into your little conspiracy theory. If this warning strikes you as too harsh, you are obviously not familiar with the after effects of this art. Simply put, for every person brought back from death, another of his race shall die untimely. If that's true, that's something we've never heard of. This spell is tantamount to murder. Therefore, it is treated as such. Nobody that we've met in this world has mentioned anything like that. It also reminds me of the wave. Necromancy is literally death magic. It can be used to draw back the spirit of the dead and force it to inhabit the body it has rightfully vacated. This does not bring the dead back to life. Indeed, the body loses its ability to feel and heal its wounds. Eventually, even the best-kept corpse will be useless. Countless accidents and daily wear will eventually exhaust its potential. And the spirit never quite grasps what has happened. It exists in a state of constant confusion. In its own mind, it is reliving its past. It replays events that it has experienced despite different environments and the lack of other players and props. That much we did know. Some lose contact with this world entirely and live only in their created reality of the past. But that is an extreme case. Most spirits can understand and communicate with the living. This is their only benefit. Resurrected corpses obey the living as well as they can, given their mental and physical limitations. In a situation where the living cannot function at peril to life or health, a corpse can perform admirably. Lexi says not only do you kill a person, you keep one alive in a state that is much lesser than they were. Exactly. Necromancy was discovered by accident. A failed experiment to uncover the soul's destination after death unexpectedly provided the basis for resurrection. No one understands precisely what the spell does. The spell's results are understood. But where are we drawing the spirit from? What are we consigning it to? Why does another person have to die? And why only from the same race? These questions will have to remain unanswered, as all experiments involving use the spell have been prohibited. Is that sentence grammatical? Am I just not parsing it? Let me try it one more time. These questions will have to remain unanswered as all experiments involving use the spell have been prohibited. I'm going to say use of the spell is what was meant. And that does seem well advised. The spell itself is as follows. Really? They want to prohibit the spell, presumably permanently, and they're just going to include it in this book. And if we look at it, we can learn it. Curious person, let's tie a string to the ankle of the spirit so we can follow it to the afterlife. Other person drags soul back into the body. Also an apt comparison, I think I would say. There it is. And look at it. It's so clean and simple. It looks like a distinguished bird's beak viewed from the front. Well, you can't unknow it. This text should serve only to remind that the practice of necromancy has been condemned. By forgetting the art and its consequences, we risk that future generations will unwittingly follow our footsteps, rediscover the discipline, and repeat our mistakes. Look upon this text as knowledge, pure and simple. Knowledge never kills or destroys, except in the hands of those who misuse it. All right, I can accept that. They included the spell in this book as a big, fat warning. Do not ever do this. It's informational, Steve. It's not a good informational text without all the information it has available. Yeah, I suppose so. Although I have to say the book phrased it a little bit better. That's it. That's the whole book. That's the tweet. That might be the shortest book we've read. Guns/spells don't kill, people do. That's it. And look at all these runes we have. We still don't... Well, maybe we do have the other runes. Are they in here? That one looks familiar. We don't have the water hitting the underside thing. Self-immolation. It only works on ourselves? I'm not casting that on me. Can we identify it though? Okay. I'm going to be very, very careful. That was synced up with the music so well. That was great. Not to cast it, just to identify it. Self-immolation. This spell can only be cast upon oneself. It creates a magic fire inside the caster which slowly burns its way to the surface, thereby destroying him painfully and in totality. It doesn't affect clothes or possessions. Once cast, there is no way to rescind it. Yep. Okay, let's cancel. Good. You decide against killing yourself in the middle of an abandoned cave that no one else can get into. Lexi, I was terrified of spontaneous combustion for years as a child, right? Okay. We're out of the cave of morbidity, resurrection, death. The cave is much larger than it appears from the outside. Okay. Hello, dog. We're back. We survived. Don't worry. Everything's fine, boy. Unless it's a girl. You run up to Balthazar, eager to discuss the amazing vision you've just experienced.
I just had an incredible vision when I picked up this black robe. What do you think it means?
A vision? Tell me about it.
I think we're becoming slightly better friends.
This is amazing. You've just experienced the life of our first dynast, Kleitus I. It answers quite a few questions I've had about his rise to power and his reign. It also answers many questions about our current situation.
Now we can chat.
How did this happen? Why did I see all of these things when I picked up the robe?
I'm not exactly sure. It's possible that when Kleitus took his own life, the robe became infused with his spirit. This happens sometimes, especially when the death is particularly violent and the victim is very powerful in magic. When you picked up the robe, what was left of Kleitus, lying there for thousands of years, passed through you. Your mind interpreted this by showing his memories. This is all speculation, you realize.
This is all speculation. I love this guy's voice. When they add things like interjections or filled pauses, I start to think that they're not being faithful to the text. But it's a minor criticism at worst.
Can you interpret the bit about Kleitus's grab for power?
I would be happy to. What would you like to know?
And it seems like they only know so much themselves about their own history. It's cool that we're discovering it together like this.
Wasn't there a ruling council at that time? Could you tell me about it?
The High Council once governed over all of Abarak. Kleitus was a member. It democratically created laws for all Sartan and at one time the Mensch as well. When the Mensch woke the Sartan, the council was the body that decided on the course of action. To put a handful of the Mensch to sleep and wait for the interconnection. The council would have continued to rule if Kleitus had not been so power-hungry.
Did we know that the Sartan have already been awakened by the Mensch in this world?
How did he convince the council to let him disband it and institute a monarchy?
He didn't have the political power to do that. No one did. So he required magical power to back his play. He made himself undefeatable with the scepter. No one dared to oppose him after he created it. It was child's play to institute the monarchy. He merely eliminated every possible opponent.
So he wasn't trying to destroy the Colossus necessarily. Maybe that was the Colossus, we still don't know, but really what he wanted to do was to take over Abarak from the Sartan? Was he himself a Sartan, though? I'm a little unclear on a few of these points.
Why did he do all of this?
I believe that to be a member of Abarak's council, the only requisite was a mastery of magic. This implied intelligence, but not necessarily sanity. Kleitus was clearly insane, if not before his play for power, then afterward.
Yeah, it also might explain a little bit more about why he didn't want to be resurrected. Maybe he just feared it and didn't want to live that rather horrible fate. I knew he would rather die.
Let's move on to another topic.
Very well.
That's something we want to know.
Can you tell me exactly what happened to the Colossus?
The Colossus is the source of Abarak's magic. It is what warms the stone, melts the ice, and feeds water throughout the world. It was an unparalleled marvel, by far the greatest of the ancients' achievements. It contains so much power that it's easy to see why Kleitus lusted after it.
Maybe he can tell us what that rune actually was.
What was the rune that he was battling with?
It was a containment rune. The spell was a cap for the Colossus's magic. It sealed the spells inside to keep the magic from flowing out, so that the Colossus would last forever.
So it was the Colossus, and he ruined everything. He probably knew he was doing it then, but he just thought that his own source of power was a higher priority. And he didn't care that he was really damaging the world and its own future. That's my guess.
What happened when he finally subdued it?
Over a period of several months, Kleitus wove an intricate set of spells that temporarily weakened the containment rune. When the structure had drained the rune of enough power, he had his dwarf servant carve a chunk of the rune away. It was a central line of the rune. Without it, the symbol was meaningless and therefore powerless. The Colossus's magic began to drain away.
Right. We know as a patron that if our heart rune is severed or cut along one of its lines, we're basically done for. And so the dwarf was just trying to do the same thing with the containment rune. Lexi says, destroying worlds for power? Gosh, I'm glad that would never happen in real life. It is a fortune, most blessed.
What did he do by removing a chunk of the rune?
It was much like taking a chunk of flesh from your body. The magic sealed inside of the Colossus started to leak out, like blood from a vital wound.
It sure looked like that was what was happening. It was intense, too. And this would be, indeed, our very next question.
Why did he do this when it would eventually destroy this world? Didn't he think ahead?
It's true that eventually the Colossus would lose enough power to cease supporting Abarak. I'm sure Kleitus must have known this. It's possible that Kleitus was counting on the interconnection. He must have reasoned that thousands of years would pass before it would actually make a difference. Long before that, the interconnection would occur, and Abarak would survive on the energies provided from it. On that, I'm a little unclear as well. The interconnection is a little mystical to me, but it's obvious that the ancients believed in it.
They certainly did, sir. We know that much. And that is a plausible hypothesis about why Kleitus would threaten Abarak. He thought that there would be a time limit on the world, but that the interconnection would happen before it ran out. But he also thinks that Kleitus was insane, so you'd think that he wouldn't need to find a reason.
Perhaps they shouldn't have. Thousands of years have passed and no interconnection has taken place. The Colossus is failing and it's taking our world with it.
Yep, that is the situation.
What did he do at the end, before he left it?
Kleitus was intelligent. He knew that people would see the Colossus with a huge chunk missing from the containment rune and realize something was amiss, so he placed an illusion upon it. Now the Colossus looks normal, even feels normal, but the hole is still there, the rune is still broken, and magic continues to flow.
I wonder if Balthazar already knew that, or if he inferred that from our vision. Because we did see the rune break, we saw the stone chunk fall out, but I think I noticed, and I might even have mentioned it, it looked like the rune was back afterwards. That would explain why. And it explains why the Colossus was not fixed. Sorry for the brief lapse there, I think we're back.
Can the Colossus be fixed?
That's an interesting question. I suppose it could. If the rune were reconnected, it would begin to function again. The spell would hold in the magic as it is supposed to. I don't know if the Colossus has enough magic left at this point to support Abarak anymore, but at least it wouldn't lose anymore.
Well, we now have all the information that we need to fix it if we want to try. It seems like that might be advisable. And if we did fix it, we would have to go to it, and then we might get a look at that other rune on the throne, too. That seems like a small bonus, but in this game, runes on hexagonal markers are extremely important.
The original fragment, if it were replaced, would do this. Actually, it wouldn't have to be the original fragment. Anything that had the missing line that fit into the hole would reconnect the rune. The complete rune is the important element, not the composition of the rock. If something with a fragment shape were placed inside the hole, the containment rune would reactivate.
So, we've seen a replica of the scepter on that statue, and it has a stone attached to it. We just can't remove it. I wondered if it was indeed the original stone, but apparently that doesn't matter. What does matter is that we get it somehow.
Enough about this subject.
Very well.
Very well.
What's the deal with the dwarf?
The dwarf was Kleitus's personal servant. He worshipped Kleitus, very like a well-trained dog. I believe that's how Kleitus saw him as well, not much more than an animal.
Why did Kleitus bring him along?
Kleitus needed someone else to break the rune. It required all of his concentration and effort merely to subdue it. While he focused on weakening the rune, he had the dwarf run in and carve out the chunk.
That's right, we know that.
What did he do while Kleitus battled the rune?
He just waited to be of service. Every day, he walked with Kleitus through the catacombs to the Colossus and waited. If you count the amount of times he wandered in and out of the catacombs with nothing to do, that dwarf must have known it like the back of his hand. You couldn't get much more dedicated.
All right, so our course is now apparent. We've seen the catacombs. They were in the castle. We didn't go in, and it's probably for the best. But if we had that dwarf with us, you'd think the dwarf could lead us right there, right? He's doing nothing but rotting in a cave and replaying his old memories.
What happened to him when he tried it the first time?
Even weakened, the rune's magic was strong. Kleitus should have known better than to send a mensch to cut the rune. It killed him instantly. I believe that this is where Kleitus finally went mad. He was so close to his goal, and his plans were about to be foiled by a lowly mensch.
That sounds about right, too. And that's when he decided to use resurrection. Maybe that's why resurrection began. He was close to his goal. The dwarf died right away. Kleitus I had read the book and the warnings about resurrection. He knew that he shouldn't use it, but he did know the spell, and he cracked and he did use it. And then I'm going to say he inspired this entire legacy of resurrection and all the horrors it has brought. And now even the current dynast is one of Kleitus' descendants. Good Lord.
In desperation, he resurrected the dwarf, knowing that the result would be much more resistant to damage than the dwarf's original body. The corpse dragged himself up, and still loyal to Kleitus, removed the chunk of stone from the containment rune. Kleitus had succeeded in breaking the rune at only the cost of a mensch. A bargain.
A bargain? And I think he's confirmed that Kleitus is a Sartan as well, not a human. Or an elf, or a dwarf.
Is that when Kleitus instituted the practice of necromancy among the Sartan?
Come to think of it, you're right. Coincidental timing? Perhaps not. It's possible that he instituted the practice to justify his own actions. That's almost unthinkable. We've been using necromancy for thousands of years to cover for one man's mistake? I certainly hope that's not the case.
And yet you don't know, do you?
Where did he end up?
After Kleitus had broken the containment rune, he had no further use of his servant. He banished him to the ancestral home of the dwarves. It's a complex of caves fairly near to Telestia. The dwarf obsessed about Kleitus for years. Having the metal retention of the dead, he eventually forgot that he had completed the mission and broken the rune, so he sat in his cave waiting for Kleitus to come and take him back to the catacombs. I think he's been waiting there ever since.
That would make sense. Perfect sense.
Let's move along to another subject.
Very well.
Tell me about the scepter of rulership.
After Kleitus took the chunk from the Colossus, he fashioned a scepter and used the chunk as a headpiece. He brandished the finished product at the council and demanded a crown. They caved in almost immediately.
The power grab went well once he was set up for it.
What kind of power did this scepter have?
Mostly destructive. It could turn a man to ash with no more than a flick of the wrist. I believe it also had powers of a more subtle nature, though my texts don't address these. What is written is that the scepter is unmatched in sheer destructive force.
How did it get its power?
When the chunk was removed from the Colossus, the containment rune was broken. Magic began to seep from it, much like blood from a wound. It was always Kleitus' intention to draw magic from the wound for his own purposes. He found that he could focus this power through the piece of the Colossus that he possessed. That is why he fashioned the scepter, using the fragment as the headpiece.
Why did the council cave in? Wasn't it filled with master wizards?
Kleitus was drawing upon the magic of the Colossus. Nothing could withstand that. Where the other wizards had to weave the rune construct slowly into the air and pull the possibilities of their spells into this reality, Kleitus could just disintegrate them with a wave of his hand. Before any organized resistance could be brought to bear, Kleitus had eliminated any council member powerful or stubborn enough to oppose him. The others fell into line like cattle.
That would be an advancement in magical technology. Almost like the advent of the revolver over the single-shot shotgun or whatever. Or maybe even the bow. I also appreciated Balthazar's disciplined pronunciation of disintegrate.
Is there any way to counter the scepter?
That's like asking if there is any way to defeat the Colossus. In a sense, it is the same thing. The scepter draws upon the Colossus's power. It cannot be overcome.
If we're the ones who are wielding it, then that's not a problem, but if anyone else is?
Although it wouldn't be necessary to overcome the scepter if it were rendered useless. This is just a wild thought, but the scepter focuses the power of the Colossus that is leaking from the broken containment rune. If the rune were completed and the containment spell resumed working, the scepter couldn't draw upon the magic. It would be useless.
Okay.
All of this speculation is worthless as well. You can't render the scepter useless without completing the containment rune. You can't complete the rune without replacing the headpiece inside the Colossus, and you can't get the headpiece without rendering the scepter useless. A vicious circle.
Where is the scepter now?
When Kleitus grew too old to rule, he placed the scepter in the hands of his eldest son, Kleitus II, and disappeared. The line is continued unbroken until this day. Kleitus XIV now holds the scepter and rules Abarak. I would guess that he has it within his palace.
Right, and we know Kleitus it's the 14th, not the 16th. Sorry about that. So he's got the real scepter, but we have a way to get the stone. And that is how we break that cycle.
Let's talk about something else.
Very well.
Can you explain why Kleitus ran away at the end?
I have a theory. After he passed the scepter on to his son, it was only a matter of time until he passed away, either naturally or at the hands of one of his many enemies. He decided to come here, to a secret cave where he could hide forever.
Because Kleitus XIV told us that if we were dead, we would tell him all our secrets. And Kleitus I did not want anyone to know his secrets, so he had to self-immolate.
Kleitus entered and decided upon a small chamber for his final resting place. He cast an illusion spell upon the entrance in order to keep everyone out. Even if someone found these caverns, they wouldn't penetrate his inner sanctum. He had reasons to want not to be discovered. At the very end, he cast a self-immolation spell. This is surprising, but not totally unexplainable. I believe that Kleitus actually feared resurrection more than death itself. By destroying his remains, even before he was dead, he assured himself that he would never be raised. That's why you found a pile of ashes inside his robes, which were fairly intact. The self-immolation spell destroys the body of the caster, but nothing else.
Right.
It appears that Kleitus wanted to minimize the chances of anyone finding and raising him. But even so, his actions seem extreme. His remains were completely destroyed. Why did he bother hiding in these forsaken caves guarded by an illusion spell? I wonder if he was hiding anything else.
We did find one other thing. Should we tell him?
I found a book lying alongside of Kleitus. It claims that necromancy is forbidden, and that for every person raised, another shall die untimely.
That is the final answer, the one I have been dreading my entire life. Necromancy is forbidden. Of course. You say that for every person brought back, another dies untimely? This is what we have termed the plague.
Of course.
We have unwittingly been killing ourselves for centuries, and we have done so at the command of a long-dead maniac. How could we have been so blind?
Balthazar stops and sobs. That's it. Now it finally all makes sense. What an amazing backstory for a world.
We have to change. We have to put things right. I shall stop the practice of necromancy with my people, but it's only a start. We have to overthrow Kleitus. We have to tell everyone.
And I think we know the answer to this, but let's ask it for good measure.
Do you know how I could get to the Colossus?
The Colossus is located in the middle of the catacombs in the foundation of Kleitus's palace. It's said that only the descendants of Kleitus I are shown the way through. No one else is allowed in. Even if you were able to sneak back into the palace, I can't imagine how you would find your way to the center of that maze. Besides Kleitus, there's no one living who can show you.
No one living indeed.
That's all I need to know.
As you wish.
Possess that guy, yo. We can't possess guys, though. We know that. And that is the wisdom of Balthazar.